Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our afternoon edition of Big Brother 22 All-Stars Live Feed Spoilers. We are hours away now from the eviction show, the proverbial last dance for Ian Terry within the game. We'll talk through some of what he's doing, some of what he's trying to pull off as we get closer and closer to this eviction. We will also go in and talk closer to the end of this video about some new controversy that is out there regarding Memphis. So we're going to dive into all of this. Before we do, if you guys do enjoy this discussion, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and if you want to support us further, check those links to the store and also our Patreon.
Okay, so Ian is really working hard to stay in the house. He has had a couple days where he's been really kind of confrontational and not taking things very well. But he's now firmly in this really trying to make things work stance. And that's sort of where we get into these conversations that Ian's been having with people. Because one of the things he's been doing is he's been wanting to bring people into the storage room and sort of like chat with everybody.
He is fighting hard and he is being really aggressive, and I know some of his tactics have honestly been off-putting to some people, where he's swearing more and he's getting frustrated and angry and all of these sort of things, and it's not all of it is great. Ian has not done a great job with a number of things this season, but what I keep kind of going back to in my head is, if we think back to the first week, all of us were so mad at Keisha for not really doing a lot, not campaigning a lot. Ian isn't always doing it right, but I can't be mad at Ian for fighting and being desperate and being worried or embarrassed about going in this position, because isn't that really what we want out of players on Big Brother? We want them to fight to the bitter end.
Yeah, we do. And that was really frustrating to watch with Keisha, because I was really excited for her to come back, and then she just kind of came and went and didn't really fight to stay in the game. And yeah, Ian hasn't been doing this perfectly, that's for sure, but he is really fighting. And it even brought him to a conversation with David, where he really is fighting for David's vote. He has promised him a final two with David, which is something that David should definitely be taking, because he doesn't have a final two with anybody. And if you're going to have a final two, there's worse people than Ian. Ian has won the game before. He's going to have a much harder time convincing the jury. David in general is just going to have a hard time beating anybody. Let's be honest about it. But going up against a previous winner, you might have a better chance, because it is harder to be like, I deserve to win twice. Well, why, right? So David did end up promising him his vote.
This may be one of these situations where David is just sort of like in his head, yeah, I know you're going to be evicted anyway, so why does it really matter if I promise you something or not? Maybe he just recognizes that. Maybe this is David playing for a jury vote and nothing else. But David has been erratic, and if he actually did stay, which still feels incredibly unlikely, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a David-Ian sort of alliance. And see, it would just be, I want to be in a room for all of their strategic conversations, because they are like total extremes gameplay-wise.
Yeah, I feel like the two of them would frustrate each other quite quickly with this. It would sort of just be a quiet alliance where they just throw each other's vote.
It would be so weird, and I wish Ian had just sort of taken this offer previously, because David had gone to him before offering him something along these lines, and at least we could have had the entertainment value of the Ian David. Their names don't work great, so it's like Devian. I can't think of a good final two name for them.
Okay, so we also have Ian has been pushing really hard with Nicole and Danny, and they're starting to get really mad at him for pushing to stay, which just feels like their guilt coming out, because you can't be mad at somebody for pushing really hard to stay in this game. You want people who want to be here, and the fact that Tyler's not really campaigning much at all, I mean, yeah, he feels comfortable, he's gonna stay, that's all fine, but you can't fault Ian for pushing, even if it's not always the best.
This is where I think I have a hard time separating, like anyone else, I think, in Big Brother. You have your personal feelings and you have your game feelings, strategy, and all of that. And that strategically, I get that it makes sense to try to not tell Ian that he is going to jury too early because you don't want to run the risk that he's going to blow up things, blow up your game, name alliances. Like, he doesn't know about the Blob Alliance, the committee, but he knows about a number of other things. And so I understand that part of it, but just the part of me that, of course, empathizes with Ian, I'm just so upset about a lot of this because it just feels like so much of this could be rectified with them just having a conversation with him and telling him the truth, of giving him the decency to know that they are just going to be voting him out. And Nicole could even tell him that it's not her decision and everybody else has kind of decided. She could find a way to frame it in a way that I think he would understand. And I think game-wise, they are going to hurt themselves dramatically because they're going to make him look silly that he believed them, and that is always the way to burn a jury vote. You don't want people to look stupid or feel like they've been made to look stupid.
The problem is that Ian has been getting really cranky about all of this stuff. He's been threatening jury votes and doing all this kind of stuff anyways. So he's not really leaving the doormat with the welcome on it to be like, come on in and let me know the truth about what's going on, because it feels like whoever is the messenger, if they make it to the end, they will be the person that will not get his vote if he actually goes to jury, because he's also threatening to just not go to jury.
It's just, I think, the part of me that just loves Ian and just listening to Danny be like, Ian, Nicole is trying everything that she can, and I'm just sitting here being like, you know, is she? She has, I mean, campaigned a little bit, but it feels like a lot more of it is, I don't really want my game to be hurt, and losing Ian is going to hurt my game. It feels more like it's about that than about, you know, I like Ian, I want Ian to be in the game for Ian's sake.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
She's not going to burn her own game for anybody, and she shouldn't, honestly, burn her game for anybody. Not for Ian, not for anybody. And that was her biggest mistake, is making a final two with someone who's not in her alliance. She should have found a way to either bring him into this alliance or make him so adjacent to this alliance that other people don't want him gone too.
I am so curious what's going to happen after this week, because trying to just take all my personal biases towards Ian and throw them out the window for a minute here, it's just like, so many people have just done a bad job this week. Like, Ian has not done a great job. Nicole has not done a great job. Dani, horrendous job as HOH with some of the decisions that she's made and how she's gone about them. And the only real winners in all of this are people like Cody and Enzo. And I mean, I guess maybe Tyler, because Tyler's probably staying, but we don't know that for absolute certainty yet.
But we do know that things are not going well for the whole, if everyone's just really hoping that David and Tyler are going to work it out here, things are not going well for these two.
Okay, so they had a halfway party last night, and happens every season around this point. The feeds are down for a little while. It seems like booze was involved, and whenever booze is involved, people act a little bit just out there. And David seemed like he was just kind of mad at Tyler because Tyler wasn't really campaigning enough to him or something, and then Tyler was just like, you know, we're kind of bros, and then David was like getting like super hostile towards him, and Tyler didn't know, I think, what was going on at a certain point. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was really weird, and I mean, yeah, when people drink, things get weird, but still, it's kind of strange. Especially with where David is in this game. I mean, he was just put on the block. He had to save himself with the power. He knows that he's a target. So why act like this?
He was just like totally poking the bear with Tyler for no real reason at all. I don't know if the David was just still mad at Tyler and that's like, yeah, sure, Ian, let's make a final two deal now. But that was a part of it.
Yeah, it's possible. It's just so weird. I don't understand why these two are having such a hard time. I get that David blew everything up at the beginning with Tyler, but Tyler, I thought, handled that really well and smoothed things out pretty well. But, like, David is holding some kind of grudge here. I don't know what's going on with them, but we'll see.
David HOH.
I know.
Let's make it happen. We don't know what I feel like it's probably going to be questions or something like that, or something super short. So
yeah, I don't think we're having another endurance. They're not going to back-to-back that.
All right. Well, we'll get into some of the controversy now that has been unfolding over the past little while. So The first thing I think that's important to note here is that regardless of whether or not Memphis, who we're going to be talking about here, said something offensive or meant to say something offensive, just because you don't say a certain word, that does not mean that you are not an offensive person, that you have prejudice in your heart, and I think that things are not so cut and dry in that sense. But we'll spell this out. So Memphis was having a discussion with Cody, and he was in the middle of sort of talking about David and talking about Nicole, and he said something that he stopped himself from saying midway, and there's a lot of reports out there. There's a report from TMZ and a number of other places that are sort of saying or bringing to light the idea that that Memphis may have been saying something that begun with the letter N that I think we all know is an extremely racist and just terrible word that should not be said within the context of Big Brother. Now, we have listened to this a number of times. I've read transcripts, and I've seen that there are a lot of different interpretations out there. And I'm not going to sit here and say to you guys that any one of them is necessarily correct, because it was cut off midway through. There is did he say something deeply offensive or was meaning to and cut himself off midway through? Was he just trying to say David's an idiot? Was he just trying to say David said Nicole and said that in that sort of phrasing to sort of repeat something that was said previously? I think all of these are out there, and honestly, I'm not in Memphis's head. I don't know what he was planning to say fully. He stopped saying it midway through. The problem here is that if you look at Memphis throughout the season, he has done and said some offensive things multiple times. We've talked about it on the channel. There was even a discussion with Christmas earlier today. Like, there is a history here, and because of that, it's harder to give someone like Memphis the benefit of the doubt, and that is a big part of the problem that we're lying into here now.
The other part of this problem lies squarely on CBS's shoulders, and I know that I've been hard on them the past few weeks even with this, but it needs repeating. When things like this are happening in the house, and it's been going on for years, season after season, there has been so many different offensive, racist, on the list goes on of things that are being said in this house. And there seems to be no real consequence for it. Like, very rarely have we seen any no one's ever been kicked out for it. There hasn't been any sort of monetary loss where it's like, oh, well, now you're not going to get your stipend or anything like that. You're not going to have a chance to win for the money anymore. Nothing is really happening. We've had like 2 exit interviews where Julie has called out only 2 people on it, and one of those people has gone on to have a very successful YouTube channel, and everything is still okay. And I think because it ends up in this position where CBS does not have a no tolerance policy, that if you say something like that, because they, we've seen sort of what was said, but because the audio is not great and he cut himself off and there's all these different interpretations, they have that audio that they can clean up, that they can go and listen to and hear what he said. And there just needs to be some sort of accountability and from CBS, because if they go back and they listen to it and they hear it and that's what happens, he just needs to be gone. And the show in general needs that, so that, because it feels a lot like all of us and sort of the court of public opinion needs to go in and do something about it, because CBS is doing nothing about it. There's no consequences for it. And yes, Big Brother is a show that is about, strategic moves and gameplay and all that.
Yeah.
But it is also about just human behavior. You're locked up in a house with other people for a long period of time. And I think that's been their stance, that if people are going to say things, they're going to say things. That's on them. And that's what they said. And that's who they are. Yeah. Okay, but now we're in a space where every season has a problem with it and there's no consequences for it. And we're all tired of it. And I don't think that it should be up to the viewers to have to do something about it.
It should be CBS who's responsible for this stuff. And, we're starting to see more of it elsewhere within this franchise globally. And there are policies that are being put in place in other places. And it does make me wonder why we don't do something like this here. Because, regardless of whether or not Memphis said something offensive or not in this given situation, it needs to be something that is universal moving forward, because I feel like it's getting more and more to the point now where you sort of mention Big Brother to people who don't watch the show, and the first thing that probably comes to mind is, oh, that's that show where people go on there and say slurs and all sorts of other terrible things all the time. And it takes away from what Big Brother should be now, which is a fun conversation about gameplay and silliness and comedy and all that sort of stuff. It's like, we're tired of coming on here and having to have these conversations because CBS isn't doing their job when it comes to stopping this stuff first and hurting people out there in life by what they're hearing or situations that are uncomfortable.
I just think that if CBS makes it so that there's just a zero tolerance policy on this, that people will actually stop doing it. Because before even anybody came on this season, they were all given like a diversity talk or a talk of like, don't do this, like be respectful and just get yourself together and just be a respectful person out there. And it hasn't done anything. So what's the purpose of this talk? Instead, it needs to be something that's going to actually hit the contestants, because outside of the game and court of public opinion isn't really working. Like I said, there's a contestant from season 15 that has an incredibly popular YouTube channel out there, and nothing has really happened. So make it that if you go into this game and you know that this is what it is, you have to go in and be respectful. If you can't do that, then get out.
That is simple, that is clear, and I think that is the best way to put it moving forward. They have to institute this. And, regardless of what Memphis said in this situation, this is the way for them to go moving forward. But we wanted to get our take out there on a lot of this because I know there are a lot of headlines. There will probably continue to be headlines. I hope production takes a look at this and looks at it seriously moving forward. But we will wrap this video up now. We will be back later tonight. We'll talk about the episode, the new HOH, what that means. And of course, we do want to hear from you. So let us know your thoughts on all of this in the comments. And we will see you guys here next time.